I smiled at Richard across the polished mahogany table, and I watched his eyes narrow with suspicion. He wasn't used to me smiling, not anymore. "You'll agree to these terms?" his lawyer asked, sliding the document toward me with barely concealed glee. "Mrs. Chen gets the house, which, as we've established, has a remaining mortgage of $340,000 against a current value of $380,000. Mr. Chen receives the pension in its entirety, currently valued at $1.2 million, as well as the investment portfolio valued at $180,000. My lawyer, Patricia, touched my arm. "Ellie, we should discuss this privately." "No need," I said, picking up the pen. "I agree to the terms." Richard's lawyer blinked. Patricia's mouth fell open. Even the mediator looked surprised. But Richard, oh Richard, he leaned back in his chair with that insufferable smirk I'd seen for 32 years. The same smirk he'd worn when he told me I was too stupid to understand finances. The same smirk he'd had when he said his secretary, Melissa, just understood him better. The same smirk that had been on his face when I died alone in our bedroom from a stroke, and he'd been in Cabo with her, returning just in time to cash out my pension for estate expenses. That was 6 months ago, in another life. "Well," Richard said, unable to hide his triumph, "I'm glad you're finally being reasonable, Ellie." I signed my name with a flourish. Eleanor Chen, 57 years old, reborn at 56 and 11 months, the night before Richard had asked for the divorce, the night before he thought he'd walk away with everything I'd built. In my first life, I'd fought him. I'd hired an expensive lawyer, drained our savings on legal fees, and fought for that pension with everything I had. The judge had ruled it was marital property, but let me keep 60%. I'd thought I'd won. I'd died 9 months later, broke, alone, and bitter, while Richard and Melissa vacationed on what remained of our assets. But now I knew something I hadn't known then. Something Richard's cocky lawyer hadn't bothered to explain to him. Something that was going to destroy him. The pension early withdrawal penalty was 50% if you cashed out before age 59 and a half. Richard was 56. "I hope you'll be happy," I said sweetly, standing to leave. Patricia gathered her papers with trembling hands, clearly thinking I'd lost my mind. "Oh, I will be," Richard said. "Melissa and I are thinking Bali for the honeymoon. Somewhere expensive." He winked. "I can afford it now." I'd loved this man once. I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through business school. I'd kept his books for his consulting firm for free for 15 years. I'd sacrificed my own career advancement to be available for his networking dinners, his client meetings, his office parties, and he'd thanked me by embezzling from our joint accounts, hiding assets, and planning this divorce the moment my pension had vested fully last year. "Enjoy Bali," I said. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. The rebirth had come without warning, without explanation. I'd opened my eyes in our bed, Richard snoring beside me, and I'd known that I'd lived this day before. It was a Thursday. Richard would wake up cheerful, make me coffee, for the first time in months, and over that coffee, he'd ask for a divorce. He'd already served the papers. They were in his briefcase. In my first life, I'd cried, I'd begged, I'd asked what I'd done wrong. This time, I got up quietly, went downstairs, and started planning. The thing about being 57 years old is that you learn things, you pay attention to details. And in my career as a county pension administrator, a career I'd kept even as Richard belittled it, calling it my little government job, I knew exactly how pensions worked. I knew the penalties. I knew the tax implications. I knew the rules, and I knew Richard didn't. He'd never paid attention to the fine print of anything. That's why I'd always handled our taxes, our insurance, our paperwork. Richard was a big picture guy. He made connections, he schmoozed clients, he talked a good game, but details? Details were beneath him. I'd spent that first reborn day going through our files. The hidden bank account in the Cayman Islands that he thought I didn't know about. The second phone with his text to Melissa. The credit cards he'd opened in my name. In my first life, I'd discovered these things during the divorce proceedings, and my lawyer had used them to argue for a bigger share. But Richard's lawyer had been better, had argued that the Cayman account was business-related, had gotten the credit card debt split between us. This time, I didn't mention any of it. This time, I let him think he was getting away with it. When he'd asked for the divorce that morning, I'd looked shocked. I'd cried, real tears, because even though I knew it was coming, even though I didn't love him anymore, the betrayal still hurt. "I just don't think we're compatible," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. "We've grown apart." He didn't mention Melissa. He wouldn't, not until the divorce was final. In my first life, I'd hired a private investigator and proven the affair. It hadn't mattered. California was a no-fault state. "I understand," I'd said quietly. He'd looked relieved. "I want this to be amicable, Ellie. We can split things fairly." "Of course," I'd said. And I'd started preparing. The house was the first piece of the trap. Richard wanted it. Of course he did. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom in Pasadena, worth at least $450,000 on the open market. The mortgage was only $340,000. What Richard didn't know was that I discovered the foundation issues 6 months before my death in the first timeline. The house needed $180,000 in repairs, structural repairs that weren't covered by insurance. I'd gotten 3 estimates, all saying the same thing. The house was essentially worth what we owed on it, maybe less. In my first life, I'd been planning to tell Richard about it when I'd had the stroke. This time, This time, I kept my mouth shut. Let him think he was winning by letting me keep the house in exchange for the pension. I had the estimates buried in my personal files. I'd copied them, stored them in 3 different locations. After the divorce was final, I'd get my own inspection, discover the problems, and sell the house to Richard for $40,000, the actual value after accounting for the repairs needed. He could have his dream house and the nightmare that came with it. But the pension was the masterpiece. I'd been paying into CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, for 34 years. I'd started as a clerk at 23, worked my way up to administrator. My pension was worth $1.2 million as a lump sum, or $6,800 a month for the rest of my life. In my first life, I'd fought to keep it. The judge had awarded me 60%, $720,000 as a lump sum, or the equivalent in monthly payments. I'd taken the monthly payments, I'd needed the guaranteed income. Richard had gotten 40%, which he'd immediately cashed out. He'd paid a 10% penalty, $48,000, because he'd taken it as a lump sum instead of rolling it into an IRA. He'd also paid taxes on it as income, about $150,000. He'd walked away with roughly $282,000. That had seemed like a victory to him. But this time, he was getting the whole thing. And this time, he wouldn't wait. I knew Richard. Melissa was expensive. The Bali honeymoon was expensive. The new condo he'd already put a deposit on was expensive. He'd cash it out immediately. $1.2 million, 50% early withdrawal penalty, $600,000. Federal taxes at 37%, because yes, it would push him into the highest bracket, $222,000. California state taxes at 13.3%, a $159,600. Richard would walk away with approximately $218,400, less than he would have gotten if he'd just taken his fair 40% share. And that was before he realized that cashing out the pension meant he'd have no retirement income. At 56, with his consulting business failing, I'd been keeping it afloat with my free bookkeeping, and I'd stopped the moment he asked for the divorce. He'd burned through that money in 2 years. Maybe less, knowing Melissa's taste for luxury. Patricia called me 3 times the day after I signed the papers. "Ellie, I have to ask, are you sure you understand what you've agreed to?" "I'm sure." "The pension is worth so much more than the house. Even with the mortgage, I know what it's worth, Patricia." "Then why?" Trust me," I said. "Please, just trust me." She'd sighed. "It's your life. The judge will sign off on it. The 60-day waiting period starts now." 60 days until the divorce was final. 60 days to put the rest of my plan in motion. I'd called my son first. James was 31, married to a wonderful woman named Sarah, father to my 2 grandchildren. In my first life, he'd been devastated by the divorce. He'd tried to maintain a relationship with both of us, but Richard had made it difficult, constantly bad-mouthing me, buying James's affection with expensive gifts funded by my pension money. James had eventually chosen his father. It had broken my heart. This time, I got ahead of it. Mom? He'd sounded surprised when I called. We hadn't been close in the last few years, my fault, really. I'd been so focused on keeping Richard happy, on maintaining the illusion of a perfect marriage, that I'd neglected my son. James, I need to tell you something. Your father and I are getting divorced. Silence. Then, Mom, I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. But I want you to know that your father is going to tell you things about me. He's going to paint me as unstable, as unreasonable. He's going to try to turn you against me. Mom, he wouldn't. He's having an affair with his secretary, Melissa. He's been hiding money in offshore accounts, and he's going to try to take everything I've worked for. Another silence. Longer this time. How do you know about the affair? So James had suspected. Maybe even known. I've known for a while, I lied. I'm telling you because I love you, and I don't want you caught in the middle. I'm not going to fight him for your loyalty. But I want you to know the truth. Does he know you know? No. Are you going to tell the lawyers? No. Why not? Because I have a better plan. I could hear the smile in his voice when he said, "That's my mom." The business was next. Richard's consulting firm, Chen Strategic Solutions, had exactly three clients. It had once had dozens, back when I was running the operations side, managing the books, following up with leads, organizing his schedule. I'd stopped all of that the day he asked for the divorce. Within a week, he'd missed 2 important deadlines. Within 2 weeks, 1 client had left. Richard called me furious. "What the hell did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Richard. I don't work for you anymore, remember? We're getting divorced." "You sabotaged me. I haven't touched anything. Maybe you should hire someone to replace me." "Oh, wait. You can't afford that now, can you, since you're not paying me anymore?" I'd hung up on him. It felt glorious. By week 4, he was down to 1 client. By week 6, he'd lost that one too. His business was failing, and he had no idea how to stop it. In my first life, this had happened too, but I hadn't understood why. I'd thought he was just stressed about the divorce. I'd actually felt sorry for him. This time, I understood exactly what was happening. Richard had never been the brains of the operation. He was the face, the charm, the salesman. I was the one who'd made it all work, and without me, it crumbled. Melissa was a fascinating piece of the puzzle. 28 years old, beautiful in that generic Instagram way, long hair, lots of makeup, designer clothes that were just slightly too tight. She'd been Richard's secretary for 2 years. In my first life, she and Richard had married 6 months after our divorce was final. They'd lasted 3 years before she'd left him for someone younger and richer. Richard had called me, drunk and crying, asking if I'd take him back. I'd said no. I'd died alone 2 months later. This time, I did some research. Melissa Chen, she'd already changed her social media to his last name, which was presumptuous even for her, had expensive taste. Very expensive. Her Instagram was full of designer bags, luxury vacations, high-end restaurants. Her secretary salary was $52,000 a year. Richard was funding her lifestyle. I'd found the credit card statements, the cash withdrawals, the jewelry receipts. In my first life, she'd stuck with him as long as the money lasted. When his business failed and the pension money ran out, she'd jumped ship. This time, I was going to accelerate that timeline. I created a fake Instagram account. Nothing elaborate, just a burner account with no posts, no followers. And I started leaving comments on her photos. "Beautiful bag. Is that the new Birkin? Those are 30,000 plus. Your man must really love you. Another vacation? You're so lucky. My boyfriend says we can't afford trips like that." "How does your boyfriend afford all this? You must be so proud of his success." Subtle. Planting seeds, making her think about money, making her expect it, making her expensive. The 60-day waiting period crawled by. Richard moved out into a luxury apartment in downtown LA. 2 bedrooms, $4,500 a month. He'd invited me to see it to show there were no hard feelings. I'd declined. Melissa posted photos of the apartment on Instagram, lots of photos. The view, the kitchen, the bathroom with the soaking tub, her posing in his bed wearing what looked like expensive lingerie. I screenshot everything. Not for the divorce. It didn't matter legally, but for my records. For the timeline I was building. James visited me twice during those 60 days. We had dinner, talked about his kids, about his work, about nothing important. On his second visit, he said, "Dad's been calling me a lot." Has he? He keeps asking if you've said anything about him, about the divorce. What do you tell him? That you seem fine, that you're moving on? James paused. He seems paranoid. He should be. James laughed. Mom, what are you planning? You'll see. Day 58, 2 days before the divorce was final, Patricia called. The judge signed off on everything. It's done. Well, it will be done in 2 days. Thank you, Patricia. Ellie, I have to know. What's your plan? I'd grown to like Patricia over the past 8 weeks. She was sharp, professional, and she'd respected my choices even when she disagreed with them. Richard is going to cash out the pension, I said. Probably immediately. Yes, I assumed. Do you know what happens when you cash out a CalPERS pension before age 59 and a half? Silence, then, oh my God. Exactly. The early withdrawal penalty site, 50%. And the taxes, he'll be in the highest bracket. Federal and state combined, he'll lose another 35 to 40%. So he'll walk away with about $220,000, maybe less. Patricia laughed, actually laughed. And if he'd just taken his share, he would have gotten more. And he would have had the option to roll it into an IRA, avoid the penalties, and actually have retirement income. Does he know? No, Richard doesn't read the fine print. He never has. You're brilliant. I'm motivated, I corrected. There's a difference. Day 60, the divorce was final. I woke up that morning feeling lighter than I had in years, maybe in my entire life. The house was mine. The mortgage was mine. The foundation problems were mine. But I was free. I made coffee, sat on the back patio, and watched the sunrise. My phone rang at 8:47 a.m. Richard. Ellie? Richard? I just wanted to say, I hope we can still be friends. This doesn't have to be ugly. Of course not. I'm picking up the pension paperwork today. Just wanted to let you know. That's fine. It's yours now. I really do hope you'll be happy, Ellie. He sounded sincere. Almost kind. It was the voice he'd used when we first dated, before marriage and mortgages and the slow erosion of everything good between us. I will be, I said. I promise you, Richard, I'm going to be very, very happy. I hung up before he could respond. 3 weeks later, James called me, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Mom, you have to, he gasped for breath. Dad just called me. Oh? He cashed out the pension. I assumed he would. Mom, he's furious. He got $218,000. I allowed myself a small smile. That's roughly what I calculated. He was expecting $1.2 million. He'd already spent most of it. He bought Melissa a Mercedes. He put a down payment on a beach house. James dissolved into laughter again. He's completely fucked. Language, James. Sorry, but Mom, he's lost his mind. He tried to sue you for fraud. His lawyer laughed at him. Literally laughed. Told him it was all legal, that he'd agreed to the terms, that he should have read the pension documentation. He should have. He's broke, Mom. The business is gone. He's going to have to sell the Mercedes to make rent. Melissa is... James paused. Actually, I don't know where Melissa is. I think she left him. That's unfortunate. Is it? James's voice was warm, amused, proud. Mom, I have to ask, did you know this would happen? I had a strong suspicion. You're amazing. I'm practical, I said. I'm a pension administrator, James. It's literally my job to know how pensions work. He's threatening to come talk to you, to explain why you need to give him some of the money back. He can try. Should I? No, let him come. Richard showed up on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the garden planting tomatoes. I'd always wanted a proper garden, but Richard had said it was too much work and made the yard look messy. Now it was my yard, my mess. He pulled up in a beat-up Honda Civic, Melissa's car, I assumed, since the Mercedes was gone. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, dark circles under his eyes. Ellie. Richard. We need to talk. I'm listening. You knew about the penalty, about the taxes. I did. You let me take the pension. You knew I'd lose everything. I knew you'd lose approximately half of it to penalties and taxes, yes. That's public information, Richard. It's in the CalPERS documentation. You signed forms acknowledging that you understood the tax implications. I didn't read them. That's not my problem. He stepped closer. For a moment, I thought he might try to intimidate me, might use his height and his anger to make me back down. I didn't move. You owe me, he said. You sabotaged me. I did no such thing. I agreed to your terms. You wanted the pension, and I gave it to you. What you chose to do with it is your own decision. You manipulated me? I respected your choices, Richard. Just like I've respected your choices for 32 years. Your choice to have an affair. Your choice to hide money in offshore accounts. Your choice to open credit cards in my name. Your choice to prioritize Melissa's luxury lifestyle over our marriage. He went pale. You knew about all of it. I've always known, Richard. I just didn't care enough to fight you anymore. You bitch. Careful, I said softly. This is my property. You're here uninvited. I can call the police. This isn't over. Yes, it is. The divorce is final. The assets are divided. You got exactly what you asked for. I'm going to sue you. For what? Honoring the terms of our divorce agreement? Being smarter than you? Good luck with that. He stared at me, this man I'd loved and hated and mourned. This man who'd taken the best years of my life and thrown them away for someone younger and prettier and more expensive. I loved you, he said finally. No, you didn't. You loved what I could do for you. You loved having someone to manage your life, to boost your ego, to make you feel important. You never loved me, Richard. You loved the idea of me. That's not true. It is. But it's okay, because I don't need your love anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need anything from you. I turned back to my tomato plants. You should go, I said. You're blocking the light. He did sue me. It went exactly nowhere. His lawyer, a different one, since his divorce lawyer refused to take the case, filed a motion claiming fraud, claiming I'd manipulated him, claiming I owed him half of the house value. My lawyer filed a response that basically said, he's an idiot who didn't read the paperwork. Case dismissed. The judge agreed. Richard was ordered to pay my legal fees, $8,000. He couldn't pay. I filed a lien against any future earnings. It felt petty. It was petty. I didn't care. The house foundation issue came to light 4 months after the divorce was final. I'd hired an inspector, gotten a comprehensive report, and listed the house for sale at $40,000. Richard saw the listing and called me, screaming. You knew! I discovered the problem after our divorce was final, yes. I had the house inspected, and it turns out we have significant foundation issues. The repairs will cost $180,000. Since I have a mortgage of $340,000 on a house worth maybe $200,000 if the foundation were sound, I'm selling it at a loss. You're lying. I have the inspection report. 3 of them, actually. I'd be happy to provide copies. I want the house. Then make an offer. I don't have $40,000. That's unfortunate. Well, if you can't make an offer, I'll have to take the first buyer who comes along. Ellie, please. I hung up. The house sold to a developer for $35,000. He planned to tear it down and rebuild. I used the money to rent a small apartment in Pasadena, walking distance from my work, with a balcony garden and hardwood floors. It was perfect. Melissa's departure was spectacular. I heard about it from James, who heard about it from a mutual friend who'd seen it on Instagram. She'd left Richard for a tech entrepreneur. 24 years old, worth $40 million from a cryptocurrency windfall. She'd posted a photo of herself on a yacht in the Mediterranean, wearing a bikini and a diamond ring the size of a grape. The caption, "New beginnings, #blessed, #living my best life." Richard had commented, "We need to talk." She'd blocked him. James said Richard had shown up at her new boyfriend's Malibu house and been escorted off the property by security. "He's completely lost it," James said. "Mom, I'm worried he might do something stupid." "He won't," I said. "Richard is many things, but he's not self-destructive. He'll survive this." Will he, though? I thought about it. About the Richard I'd known, the Richard I'd loved, the Richard who'd destroyed me in my first life. "Probably," I said. "Men like Richard always land on their feet. They find someone new to take care of them, someone new to blame for their problems. He'll be fine." "Do you care?" "No," I said honestly, and not anymore. A year after the divorce, I took early retirement. I was 58, healthy, and tired of working for other people. My pension, the one I'd kept, would pay me $6,800 a month for the rest of my life. I'd saved another $200,000 in my 401k, which I planned to leave untouched until I was at least 65. I could live comfortably on the pension alone. I bought a small cottage in San Luis Obispo, an hour from James and his family. 2 bedrooms, a garden, a view of the hills. I planted vegetables and flowers. I volunteered at the local library. I took up painting. I dated a retired teacher named Michael who liked hiking and old movies and didn't mind that I was terrible at cooking. I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Richard called me on what would have been our 34th anniversary. "Ellie?" "Richard, I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." I was painting when he called. A landscape, all blues and greens and soft yellows. I set down my brush. "Okay." "I mean it. I was a terrible husband. I took you for granted. I threw away the best thing in my life for—" He laughed bitterly. "For nothing. For absolutely nothing." "Are you drunk, Richard?" "A little, maybe. Does it matter?" "No." I lost everything, Ellie. The business, the money, Melissa. Even James barely talks to me anymore. That must be difficult. Is that all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Richard? That I forgive you? That I understand? That it's all okay? I don't know what I want. I picked up my brush again. The painting was coming along nicely. The sky needed more depth, but the trees were perfect. I'm happy, Richard. For the first time in decades, I'm genuinely happy. I have a home I love, a life I love, people who value me. You can't take that from me, not anymore. I never wanted to take anything from you. Yes, you did. You wanted everything. And the tragedy is, I would have given it to you. If you'd just been honest, if you'd just been kind, I would have given you whatever you wanted. Ellie, but you weren't, so I didn't. And now we both have to live with those choices. Do you hate me? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't hate you, Richard. I don't really feel anything for you at all. You're just someone I used to know. He was quiet for a long time. I really did love you, he said softly. Maybe not well, maybe not enough, but I did love you. Maybe you did, I said. But it doesn't matter now. Goodbye, Richard. I hung up before he could respond. He didn't call again. 5 years after the divorce, James and Sarah threw me a party for my 63rd birthday. My grandchildren, Emma, now 9, and Lucas, now 7, made me cards. Emma's had glitter and stickers and said, "Best grandma ever," in wobbly letters. Lucas's had a drawing of me in my garden, surrounded by flowers. James grilled burgers. Sarah made her famous potato salad. Michael brought wine and chocolate cake. We sat in my garden under string lights I'd hung from the oak tree and ate and laughed and talked about nothing important. "Speech," James called. "Come on, Mom, give us a speech." "I'm not good at speech." "You're good at everything," Sarah said warmly. "Speech." I stood, glass of wine in hand, and looked at the faces around. Me. My family, my chosen family. People who loved me not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. I'm not sure what to say, except thank you. Thank you for being here, for being part of my life, for making this. I gestured at the garden, the cottage, the evening light filtering through the trees. Possible. "We love you, Grandma," Emma shouted. "I love you too, sweetheart. All of you." I paused. You know, there was a time in my life when I thought I'd lost everything. When I thought the best years were behind me. And all I had left was less. Less joy, less love, less life. "That's depressing, Mom," James said, but he was smiling. It is. But it's also not true. Because the truth is, the best years weren't behind me. They were ahead of me. They're now. This is the best my life has ever been. "Hear, hear," Michael raised his glass. "So, here's to new beginnings," I said. To second chances. To choosing ourselves even when it's hard. To letting go of people who don't value us. And to building a life we actually want to live. We drank. We ate cake. We laughed until our faces hurt. And later, when everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up the garden, I thought about Richard. I wondered if he was happy. I wondered if he'd found peace. I hoped he had. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because I'd realized something important over the past 5 years. My happiness wasn't contingent on his suffering. My freedom wasn't about his imprisonment. My joy wasn't diminished by his joy. I'd won not because I'd destroyed him, but because I'd saved myself. The pension had been a trap, yes. A clever, calculated trap that had cost him dearly. But it had also been a gift to myself. A reminder that I was smart, that I was capable, that I was worth more than 32 years of thankless service to a man who'd never appreciated me. I'd let him take the pension in the divorce, and in doing so, I'd taken back my life. 7 years after the divorce, I got a wedding invitation. "Richard Chen and Catherine Morris request the pleasure of your company." Catherine was a widow, apparently. 62 years old, a retired accountant. They'd met at a support group for divorced and widowed seniors. James told me the details over coffee. "He seems calmer," James said carefully. "More settled. Catherine is really good for him." "I'm glad." "Are you going to go to the wedding?" I looked at the invitation, heavy cardstock, elegant font, a venue in Santa Barbara. "No," I said, "but send them a card from me. Wish them well." "Really?" "Really, I meant what I said, James. I don't hate your father. I'm glad he's found someone. I hope he treats her better than he treated me." James reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're a better person than I am." "I'm just a person who learned that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't work that way." 10 years after the divorce, I was in the garden when I felt it. The tightness in my chest, the pain radiating down my arm. This was how it had happened the first time. A stroke. Alone in the house, no one to call for help. But this time, Michael was there. We'd moved in together a year ago, had just gotten back from the farmer's market. Ellie, what's wrong?" He called 911. He stayed with me, held my hand, told me to breathe. The paramedics came. They stabilized me, loaded me into the ambulance. I survived. 2 weeks in the hospital, 3 months of physical therapy, medication for the rest of my life. But I survived. And when I woke up in the hospital, James was there. Sarah was there. Emma and Lucas were there. Michael was there. I wasn't alone. 15 years after the divorce, I sat in my garden and thought about the life I'd lived. Both lives, really. The first life, where I died alone and bitter, where Richard had taken everything and left me with nothing. The second life, where I'd taken everything back. People would probably say I'd been vindictive, that I'd trapped Richard, manipulated him, destroyed him out of spite. Maybe they were right, but I didn't think so. I thought about all the ways I could have hurt him. I could have exposed the affair during the divorce, made him look bad in front of friends and family. I could have fought for every penny, dragged him through years of litigation. I could have turned James against him, poisoned that relationship. I hadn't done any of that. I'd simply let him make his own choices. Let him be greedy. Let him assume I was stupid. And I'd known because I was a pension administrator, because it was literally my job to know exactly what would happen when he made those choices. Was that manipulation? Or was that just intelligence? I'd never decided, but I'd stopped caring. Because the truth was, the pension had been the least important part of my revenge. The real revenge was this. I was happy. I had a home I loved, a partner who respected me, a son who valued me, grandchildren who adored me, friends who enriched my life. I had hobbies and interests and passions. I volunteered at the library and the animal shelter. I painted badly but joyfully. I hiked and gardened and cooked elaborate meals just for the pleasure of it. I was more than just Richard's ex-wife. I was more than just a pension administrator. I was Ellie, Eleanor Chen, 67 years old and still discovering who I wanted to be. That was my revenge. Not the money, not the penalties, not watching him suffer, just being happy despite him, being happy without him, being happy because I'd chosen myself, finally. After 32 years of choosing him first, 20 years after the divorce, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Chen? Eleanor Chen? Yes? This is Patricia Morrison calling from Cedars Sinai Medical Center. I'm calling about Richard. Chen, you're listed as his emergency contact. My blood went cold on the What happened? He's had a heart attack. He's stable now, but he's asking for you. He says he needs to talk to you. I haven't seen him in 20 years. I understand, but he's quite insistent. He says it's important. I looked at Michael, who was reading the newspaper on the porch. At my garden, my home, my life. I'll come, I said. Richard looked old. That was my first thought when I walked into his hospital room. He was 76, of course, but he looked older. Frail, gray, diminished. Ellie. Richard. You came. You asked. He smiled weakly. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Why did you? I thought about it. Closure, maybe. Or curiosity, I'm not sure. Thank you for coming, I mean. I sat in the chair beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like shit. But they tell me I'll live. He laughed, but it turned into a cough. For now, anyway. That's good. Is it? I didn't answer. I wanted to say, he paused, struggling for words. I've been thinking a lot. About my life. About the choices I made. About you. Richard, let me finish. Please. I nodded. I was a terrible husband. Worse than terrible, I was cruel and selfish and stupid. I threw away 32 years with a woman who loved me, who supported me, who made me better than I was. And for what? For Melissa, who left me the second the money ran out. for a series of increasingly desperate relationships with women who didn't actually like me, for a life of nothing, of loneliness and regret, and wishing I could go back and do it differently. We can't go back, I said softly. I know, believe me, I know. But I wanted you to understand I've carried this guilt for 20 years, this knowledge that I destroyed the best thing in my life. And I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry, that I was wrong, that you deserve so much better than what I gave you. I studied his face. He meant it, I could see that. After all these years, all this time, he finally understood. I forgive you, I said. He looked shocked. You do? I do. Not because you deserve it necessarily, but because I deserve to let it go. I've spent 20 years building a life I love, Richard. A life that has nothing to do with you. And the last piece of that life is forgiving you and moving on. Are you happy? He asked. Very. Good. That's good. You deserve to be happy, Ellie. So do you. Do I, though? Everyone deserves happiness, Richard. Even people who make terrible choices. He was quiet for a long moment. Then Catherine left me 3 years ago. I'm sorry. Don't be. I earned it. I was me. Selfish, demanding, taking her for granted the same way I took you for granted. She finally had enough. Are you alone? James visits sometimes. He's a good son, better than I deserve. He is. And you? Are you still with Michael, was it? I am. We've been together for 19 years. That's wonderful, really. We sat in silence. Outside, the hospital bustled with activity. Inside, it was just the two of us, two people who'd once promised forever and had barely made it 3 decades. The pension thing, Richard said finally. That was brilliant. I blinked. What? The pension, letting me take it, knowing I'd cash it out, knowing I'd lose everything. It was brilliant. I didn't realize it at the time. I was too angry, too stupid. But looking back, brilliant. I don't know what you're talking about. Ellie, come on. We both know you knew. You were a pension administrator. You understood the penalties, the taxes, all of it. And you let me walk right into it. I didn't confirm or deny. I'm not angry, he said. I haven't been angry in years. If anything, I'm impressed. I spent our entire marriage underestimating you, thinking I was smarter, thinking I was better. And you proved me wrong in the most poetic way possible. I didn't do it to prove anything. Maybe not. But you did it anyway, and it worked. I lost everything, and you won. You built a whole new life, a better life. The life you deserved all along. Richard, I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ellie. I don't deserve it. I'm just saying, I see you now. I see what you are, what you've always been. Smart, capable, strong. And I'm sorry I was too stupid to see it when it mattered. I felt tears prick my eyes. After all these years, after all this time, hearing him say it actually meant something. Thank you, I said. Thank you, he countered. For coming, for listening, for not hating me. I don't hate you, Richard. I haven't for a long time. That might be worse, indifference. Maybe, but it's honest. He smiled. It is. I left the hospital an hour later. Richard and I exchanged phone numbers. He promised to call if he needed anything. I promised to answer. We both knew I wouldn't hear from him again. Some endings are quiet like that, not dramatic, not painful, just done. I drove home to my cottage, to Michael and my garden and my painting and my life. And I thought about the pension one last time. People would say I'd been vindictive, that I'd manipulated him, destroyed him, taken revenge. But the truth was simpler and more complex than that. The truth was I'd known what the pension was worth. I'd known what would happen if Richard took it. and I'd let him choose. I hadn't forced him to be greedy. I hadn't forced him to cash it out. I hadn't forced him to prioritize immediate gratification over long-term security. I'd just known that he would, and I'd let him. Was that manipulation, or was that just understanding someone well enough to predict their choices? I'd never decided, but I'd stopped needing to.
You're smart and you're fucked
because
up.
the pension had never been about punishing Richard. It had been about saving myself, about choosing myself, about understanding, finally, that I was worth more than 32 years of service to someone who didn't value me. The early withdrawal penalties had cost Richard half the pension, but the divorce, the freedom, the choice, the chance to build a new life
I feel like
had given me everything.
hey,
That was the real calculation.
Unfortunately,
That was the real victory. Not the money, not the revenge, just me finally choosing me and living with that choice joyfully for the rest of my life.
If you really believe, if you get good grades, smart, SMRT. I'm lost on the bottom of this. Whoa, that's sick. See, u kan if u won, u kan if won. So true. Beautiful sentiment. Wingardium Leviosa. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Am I about to just paint a fucking truck in front of this? Like, what do I do? Okay, let me see. What other references do I have? I took a few photos. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this will work. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. The painting is a breath of fresh. I love that. Yeah, I like that. That's what Isaac, I've been worried about you. Oh, Isaac, thank you. Hi. Welcome back. How have you been? We've missed you, Isaac. I know that account. I know him. Welcome. Paint Honnold doing chin-ups in a van. Yeah, yes. Welcome back, Isaac. I hope you're well. I hope you've been good. Matu. And thank you for the eggs. Can I offer you eggs in these trying times? Almost typed a cunt, because of course I did. Yeah, of course you did. May I offer you eggs? Jinx.